100 years of death, destruction, and violence leads us into part 2 of the War of the Roses today. Edward III, Richard II, then Henry V will lead us into the king that will cause the War of the Roses, Henry VI. Their lineage and their strifes and their struggles and a whole lot of fucking is what leads the kingdom into becoming divided into two. So let's sit back, get ready to listen to just a whole bunch of tales of, sleeping around on today's episode of Historical Quarrel. Welcome back, everyone, to Historical Quarrels. Today, it is just me. Unfortunately, the co-host last time, Braden, was unable to make it today. So you're stuck with me, and only me. And you know what? If you don't like that, well, shit. That sucks. I guess you're going to have to be kind of sad this episode, aren't you? And, that's... so bad for you. I feel really bad. If there's anything I can do to make it up to you, anyways, we are going to be just absolutely plowing through the rest of this, that way we can actually get into the real meat of the conflict. I also got a lot of stories from a few of the battles and some of the letters that were written between Henry VI and Richard of York, because it's good shit. It's pretty funny. What's even funnier, though, is the shit that led into the 100 Years' War, because really it's just is kings being dicks to each other and being like, oh, you disrespected me, I'm going to kill you now. I'm French. Oh, man. French people, I really hope you don't listen to this. If you're French, I'm sorry. My aunt is Tahitian, which I know isn't French, but, you guys conquered that land, so fuck you. Yeah. But, yeah, other than that, though, let's go ahead and get started. At the end of the show, I'll have some updates. Okay, let's go. Oh, man. Shit. Good day, class. I got a headache. Let's get into it. All right, just sit down and let's get into this shit. All right, so quick recap of where we left off. We had gone over the origins of House Plantagenet and the Anjou, and now we are on to the conflict with the House of Valois. In 1328, Charles IV of France died without a male heir. Queen Isabella made a claim to the throne of France on behalf of her son Edward, on the grounds that he was a matrilineal grandson to Philip IV of France. However, the precedent set by Philip V's succession over his niece Joan II of Navarre, goddamn French names. Y'all make it too difficult. Listen, you want people to speak your language right, maybe make it less hard. I don't know. Fucking don't use your nose and shit so much. Anyways, and Charles IV's succession over his nieces meant that the senior grandson of Philip III in the male line, Philip of Valois, became king. Not yet in power, Edward paid homage to Philip as Duke of Aquitaine by totally not helping out Philly's cousin Robert, who wanted him dead, and hiding him. Nah, you wouldn't do that. Edward is a good boy, and he would never... He totally fucking did. So, in 1337, Philip confiscated Aquitaine and Ponthieu from Edward, alleging he was harboring Philip's fugitive cousin and enemy, Robert of Artois. In response, Edward proclaimed himself King of France to encourage the Flemish to rise in open rebellion against the French king. This was also an attempt to have the Flemish people killed because Edward didn't like their name and thought, ew, gross, I don't even want to rule over that. Ew. So he got them to revolt and die before he would try to take over France, obviously. Just kidding. No, he did need them to revolt, however, for military strategy, and I'm sure he didn't really give a fuck about their names, just, more people to rule over. The conflict, later known as the 100 Years' War, included a significant English naval victory at the Battle of Sluis, and a victory on the land at Crécy, leaving Edward free to capture the important port of Calais, and a subsequent victory against Scotland at the Battle of Neville's Cross resulted in the capture of David II and reduced the threat from Scotland. The Black Death brought a halt to Edward's campaigns by killing perhaps a third of his subjects. I do want to point out how fucking insane this is, as the estimated total death toll of the Black Death was anywhere from 75 million to 200 million. On the low end, it ties with World War II in decimating a population. On the high end, it was over 2 times more effective in killing people than we were during World War II, which was considered the deadliest war ever fought. Just imagine if COVID literally killed a third of our country, like here in the US. Not just the 5 million it has sadly taken, but 75 million plus. Thank God for modern medicine, because that would suck balls. I would be shitting myself going outside if we were dealing with the Black Death. Shit. Anyways, the only Plantagenet known to have died from the Black Death was Edward III's daughter, Joan of Bordeaux, and it's because she was weak. And, maybe if she wasn't so fucking weak, she would have lived. And that's what Edward said, having learned that from his grandfather. No, he didn't say that. It wasn't because she was weak. Just it didn't care about royals or not. It wasn't just like a peasant death thing. It was everybody fucking died. Edward the Black Prince resumed the war with destructive chevauchés starting from Bordeaux. His army was caught by a much larger French force at Poitiers, but the ensuing battle was a decisive English victory, resulting in the capture of John II of France. John agreed to a treaty promising the French would pay a 4 million in their currency in ransom. The subsequent Treaty of Bretagne was demonstrably popular in England, where it was both ratified in Parliament and celebrated with great ceremony. They had about 5 nights of orgies and 7 nights of just straight drinking. Pretty crazy. They really tapped into those Roman roots. So, go them. To reach agreement, clauses were removed that would have had Edward renounce his claim to the French crown in return for territory in Aquitaine and the town of Calais. These were entered in another agreement to be effected only after the transfer of territory by November 1361. And after November 1361, they went ahead and they had hostages from the Valois family that were held in London while John returned to France to raise his ransom. Edward had restored the lands of the former Angevin Empire, holding Normandy, Brittany, Anjou, Maine, and the coastline from Flanders to Spain. So pretty big empire there. Like he was kicking ass, and everyone was pretty happy about it. When the hostages escaped back to France, John was horrified that his ward had been broken and returned to England, where he eventually died of dysentery, and is reported to have been weeping over the death of almost half his country. France had about a 40% death toll, which is wild, whilst he shit himself to death and died of the dehydration it causes. Fucking sucks. Fighting in the 100 Years' War spilled from the French and the Plantagenet lands into surrounding realms, included the dynastic conflict in Castile between Peter of Castile and Henry II of Castile. The Black Prince allied himself with Peter, defeating Henry at the Battle of Nájera. Edward and Peter fell out when Peter was unable to reimburse Edward's military expenses, leaving him bankrupt. Which, kind of a shitty thing to do. It's like, those friends that you help out, and, they're your homies and everything, so you help them out being like, okay, I am expecting you to get me back, though. And then 2 years go by, and when you ask for it, they're like, dude, fuck, I can't pay that. And then you shit yourself because you realize you helped them out too much. So, fuck them. That sucks. The Plantagenets continued to interfere, and John of Gaunt, first Duke of Lancaster, the Black Prince's brother, married Peter's daughter, Constance. Claiming the crown of Castile in her name, he invaded with an army of 5,000 men. However, fighting was inconclusive before Gaunt agreed to treaty with King Juan of Castile. Terms of the treaty included the marriage of John of Gaunt's daughter, Catherine, to Juan's son, Enrique. And oh boy, was Enrique a sexy motherfucker. Looking at pictures of this guy. Look at that Enrique. He looked like that pool boy that, you know, rich grandmas be looking at. I'm kidding. I'm fucking around. I'm getting a little tipsy this episode, and I hope you guys enjoy that. Charles V of France maintained the terms of the Treaty of Bretagne, but encouraged others in Aquitaine to challenge the authority of the Plantagenets in Aquitaine. The prince, who had suffered a debilitating illness for nearly a decade, which often restricted his movement to being carried in a litter or like a little stretcher, kind of, not really, returned to England where he soon died. John of Gaunt assumed leadership in France with limited success, and peace negotiations over several years were inconclusive, meaning they didn't do shit. Peace never fucking helped. Anyways, Edward III is where the Yorks and the Lancasters trace their lineage back, primarily. I mean, it was like Richard II as well, but Edward III is the big one, because he's the one who almost fucking did it. Almost took over fucking France and England, which is impressive. That's akin to uniting, you know, the Roman Empire back, which is really difficult to do. Like, oh man. Oh, delicious. But yeah, the marriage of Edward III and Philippa of Hainault produced 13 children and 32 grandchildren. That's a lot of kids. Edward, who married his cousin, Joan of Kent, so some more incest. Another Edward, 1365, 1371. Richard, 1367, 1400. Isabella, Marie, Philippa, Jean, who died at 13 years of age. Sad. William. Lionel had one daughter with Elizabeth de Burgh. Philippa, through Philippa, the House of York, by cognatic kinship, asserted that its claim to the throne was superior to the House of Lancasters. So Philippa is going to be who the Yorks are like, hey, I got more of that royal blood in me than they do with Lancasters. So, yeah. John of Gaunt married Blanche of Lancaster, the heiress to a duchy of Lancaster and a direct descendant of Henry III, and had 7 children with her. And then Philippa, John, and Elizabeth. Edward of Lancaster, John of Lancaster, Henry, Isabella of Lancaster. After Blanche's death in 1369, John married Constance of Castile, trying unsuccessfully to obtain the throne of Castile, obviously. Catherine of Lancaster married Henry III of Castile. Constance died in 1394, after which John married Catherine Swynford on 13th of January 1396. Their 4 children were born before they married. The Pope legitimized them in 1396, as did Richard II by charter. So, you know, just being a homie there and being like, you know, here, your kids can not be bastards. So, and then they had John, Henry, Thomas, Joan, Edmund, Edward, Constance, Richard, Blanche, Mary of Waltham, Margaret, John, Thomas. Lots of Joans, Blanches, Edmunds, Edwards, lots of people. Anyways, demise of the main line. Okay, this is where you know, why the Yorks and Lancasters are going to get a little confused as to who should be king. Because the main line fucking just ends. The Black Prince's 10-year-old son succeeded as Richard II of England on the death of his grandfather. Nominally exercising all the powers of kingship, supported by various councils, his government levied poll taxes to finance military campaigns, which, combined with the poor state of the economy, resulted in the Peasants' Revolt in 1381, followed by brutal reprisals against the rebels. Namely, they'd go out to the peasants and fucking just huck them into barns, burned them alive, pulled some like real crazy Viking shit, essentially. And they would, you know, take women out on the street, ravish them is some of the terms. Not great. I can see why the peasants revolted. I would have revolted too. Kind of fucking sucks. The king's uncle, Thomas of Woodstock, first Duke of Gloucester, Richard Fitzalan, 11th Earl of Arundel, and Thomas de Beauchamp, 12th Earl of Warwick, became known as the Lords Appellant when they sought to impeach 5 of the king's favorites and restrain what was increasingly seen as tyrannical and capricious rule. Which, I don't know if that was entirely, 10-year-old Richard II's fault. I think it was more like the lords were like, hey, you gotta do something, Richard. If you don't do it, then, people are gonna call you a bitch. And when you're 10, being called a bitch hits harder than it would as an adult. So I can see why a 10-year-old would think that it's more than fine to really try and stamp out rebels in a brutal fashion that he did. However, also super fucked up, and a 10-year-old should never be saying those things, so maybe they were right to do this. Anyways, they were joined later by Henry Bolingbroke, the son and heir of John Gaunt, and Thomas de Mowbray, 1st Duke of Norfolk. Initially, they were successful in establishing a commission to govern England for 1 year. But they were forced to rebel against Richard. Defeating an army under Robert de Vere, Earl of Oxford, at the skirmish of Radcott Bridge, Richard was reduced to a figurehead with little power. As a result of the merciless Parliament de Vere, Michael de la Pole, First Earl of Suffolk, who had fled abroad, was sentenced to death in their absence. Alexander Neville, Archbishop of York, had all of his possessions confiscated. Several of Richard's council were executed. On Jean of Gaunt's return from Spain, Richard was able to reestablish his power. Having Gloucestershire murdered in captivity in Calais, Warwick was stripped of his title, which is so fucked up. This was like some conniving shit that Richard pulled. This is more Game of Thrones style shit. Richard was like, I'm about to fucking execute everyone and dab on their graves. This little piece of shit 13-year-old. Let's see, what is he, like 15 at this point? So, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, totally a Joffrey type. That's why I'd consider Richard II, to be honest. But yeah, he had Gloucestershire murdered in captivity, Warwick stripped of the title, and Bolingbroke and Mowbray were executed. When John of Gaunt died in 1399, Richard disinherited John's son Henry, who invaded England in response with a small force that quickly grew in numbers. Meeting little resistance, Henry deposed Richard to have himself crowned Henry IV of England. Richard died in captivity early the next year, probably murdered, bringing an end to the main Plantagenet line. None of Henry's heirs were free from challenge on the grounds of not being the true heir of Richard II, and that the Lancastrian dynasty had gained the throne by an act of usurpation. So, yeah. Lancasters, rebel against Richard II for being fucking tyrannical and a dick. And Henry IV, literally just gathers an army, and it grows in numbers because people fucking hate Richard II. And he was met with very little resistance because I imagine the army having to deal with Richard II shit was like, nah, dude, fuck off. I hate you. And they let them kind of just walk in there and kill him. So, awesome. Richard II was a little shit, but again, he was probably just raised that way, and that's how the Lancasters end up in power. So anyways, after Henry IV took over, we've got Henry V coming in, and then he ends up having Henry VI. And Henry VI was born on the 6th of December, 1421 at Windsor Castle, who was the only child and heir apparent of King Henry V. Succeeding to the throne as King of England at the age of 9 months on September 1st, 1422, the day after his father's death, he remains the youngest person ever to succeed the English throne. On the 21st of October. Yeah, imagine being 9 months old and being the fucking king. Oh, man. I mean, that's why they have, people, rule in his stead and everything, obviously, until he's of age. But holy shit. being king from birth, like you grow up and you're king. You know, most of the other people had to, be a prince. They learned for a while and then they became king. This motherfucker was just king out the pussy, basically. But Henry V was a cool guy. He almost conquered France. He was like right fucking there. But yeah. Anyways, on the 21st of October, 1422, in accordance with the Treaty of Troyes in 1420, became the titular king of France upon his grandfather Charles VI's death. His mother, the 20-year-old Catherine of Valois, was viewed with considerable suspicion by English nobles as Charles VI's daughter. She was prevented from playing a full role in her son's upbringing. Because, like, they didn't want to have fucking some French bitch try and take over. And, I get that. Like, there'd be, like, some Russian, or, like... So, I guess, I don't know. If someone was, like... It'd be like Putin's daughter if Putin had a kid born in America and then Putin's daughter wanted to run for president. It'd be a little weird. It'd be a little weird to, vote her into office. Yeah, I'd feel a little sketchy about it, to be honest. So, I kind of get where they're coming from here. But taking it back a little bit, we're gonna go into the House of York now, since we're there. Before we get fully into Henry VI. So let's just go ahead and talk about them. House of York, Edmund of Langley, 1st Duke of York, 1st Earl of Cambridge, was a younger son of King Edward III of England and Philippa of Hainaut, the fourth of their 5 sons who lived to adulthood. He was the founder of House York. But it was through the marriage of his younger son, Richard of Conisborough, to Anne Mortimer, that the Yorkist faction in the Wars of the Roses made its claim on the throne. The other party in the War of the Roses, the Lancasters, were descendants of Edmund's older brother, John of Gaunt, whose son Henry usurped the throne of Richard II in 1399, that we just talked about. Anyways, Edmund had 2 sons, Edward and Richard. Edward succeeded to the dukedom in 1402, but was killed in Battle of Agincourt in 1415 with no issue. Richard married Anne Mortimer, a great-granddaughter of Lionel Antwerp, the second surviving son cadet line of Edward III. Furthermore, Anne's son Richard also became heir general to the earldom of March after her only brother, Edmund V Earl, died without issue in 1425. Their father, Roger Mortimer, 4th Earl of March, had been named heir presumptive of Richard II before Henry IV's ascension. Although it had been passed over at the time, and son Richard was also inherited this claim to the throne. Richard was executed following his involvement in the Southampton plot to depose Henry V of England in favor of the Earl of March. The Dukedom of York therefore passed to his son, Richard Plantaget. Through his mother, Richard Plantaget also inherited the lands of the Earldom of March, as well as Mortimer claims to the throne. So that's how, that all came to be. Okay, so Earls of Lancaster. After the supporters of Henry III of England, after they went ahead and suppressed the opposition from the English nobility in the Second Barons' War, Henry granted to his second son, Edmund Crouchback, the titles and possessions forfeited by the attainder of the Barons' leader, Simon de Montfort, 6th Earl of Leicester, included the Earldom of Leicester on October 26, 1265. Later grants included the first Earldom of Lancaster on 30th of June, 1267, and that of Earl Ferrers in 1301. Edmund was also Count of Champagne and Brie from 1276 by right of his wife. And lots of people just gaining the kingdom through their wives here, because the sons were fucking weak. Like I was talking about last week. Sons just didn't know how to rule. Fucking Granddaddy Edward and Granddaddy Richard knew what the fuck they were doing. And no one else did. So, sorry, I had to take another shot of this limoncello thing. Holy fuck, it's good. Whew! Yeah, guys, I'm gonna get crunk this episode. I'm gonna get real fucking crunk. Anyways, Henry IV of England would later use his descent from Edmund to legitimize his claim to the throne, even making the spurious claim that Edmund was the elder son of Henry, but had been passed over as king because of his deformity, which he was pretty fucking deformed. He looked like a hunchback, but like worse. Now I'm pretty sure Esmeralda wouldn't have even like tried to kiss him. Number one, because he was an asshole. Number two, because he was gross. So Edmund's second marriage to Blanche of Artois, the widow of King of Navarre, was placed him at the center of European aristocracy. Blanche's daughter, Jeanne I of Navarre, was queen regent of the Navarre through her marriage of Philip IV of France, with queen consort of France as well, which is pretty cool. You know, that's pretty cool, man. Edmund's son, Thomas, became the most powerful nobleman in England, gaining the earldoms of Lincoln and Salisbury through marriage to the heiress Henry de Lacy, 3rd Earl of Lincoln. His income was £11,000 per annum, double that of the next wealthiest earl, which is fucking crazy to think about. Like $11,000 a year was super wealthy back then. That's man, I think it's like a couple million today per year or something based off of inflation, but still, back then, 11,000, man, I'd be real fucking wealthy. I'd be a fucking king. Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. Well, then if we decrease, oh man, I'd be a peasant. Fuck. I'd be a fucking peasant. That deserved a drink. Oh man, so sad. It's so good, but it burns so much because it's 26%. Thomas and his younger brother Henry served in the coronation of the cousin King Edward II of England on the 25th of February, 1308. Thomas and carried Cortanas, the Sword of Mercy, which, you know, based off of me playing a lot of Assassin's Creed games, I'm pretty sure that's also just the Sword of Mars, or like, you know, one of those ESO artifacts. In all reality, you know, Assassin's Creed has it right. You know, there's this big, huge ESO conspiracy, and we're all just involved in it. And the FBI has just been secretly feeding. The fuck is the game developer? Everybody hates them because they ruined Battlefront. EA. They've been feeding EA secrets about the. Actually, I saw that conspiracy online. Like some comment on a YouTube video is like, no, this is all just like, you know, real, and the games are a simulation with like how people would actually respond to the information if it was let out. Wake up, sheeple. That's something for fucking Dan to look into. That shit's hilarious. But yeah, and Henry carried the royal scepter, also an ESO artifact. After initially supporting Edward, Thomas became one of the Lords Ordainers, who demanded the banishment of Piers Gaveston and the governance of the realm by a baronial council. So he was the one who was like, yo, we should do barons and shit, and we should be able to, like, fuck up peasants. So fuck Thomas. Fucking asshole. After Gaveston was captured, Thomas took the lead in his trial and execution at Warwick in 1312. Edward's authority was weakened by poor governance and defeat by the Scots at the Battle of Bannockburn. This allowed Thomas to restrain Edward's power by republishing the ordinances of 1311. Following this achievement, Thomas took little part in the governance of the realm, instead retreated to Pontefract Castle. This allowed Edward to regroup and rearm, leading to a fragile peace in August 1318, the Treaty of Leek, and, you know, we've covered a lot of this, but essentially because of all this is how the Lancasters get so involved with the Pentagets, and, you know, Mortimer ends up losing support of the Treaty of Edinburgh. I learned that from my Highland Clans episode I did. Edinburgh, Northampton, that formalized Scotland's independence. Oh, fuck. Yeah, that's good stuff. and developing power in the Welsh marches provoked jealousy from barons. When Mortimer called a parliament to make his new powers and estates permanent with his title of Earl of March in 1328, oh shit, Henry led the opposition and held a counter meeting. In response, Mortimer ravaged the lands of Lancaster and checked the revolt. Edward III was able to assume control in 1330, but Henry's further influence was restricted by poor health and blindness for the last 15 years of his life. So that's why they won, because he gets fucked up, man. He gets fucked up, and yeah, it sucks. Big sad. Anyways, back to Henry V. So, or really Henry VI, but we're going to talk about Henry V a little bit. Henry VI's father was a great warrior king, first of all. Henry VI was born with extremely large shoes to fill. His father was King Henry V, one of the most legendary warrior kings in history. Henry V was brutal, cunning, and ruthless, and his reign saw England become more powerful than it had ever been. But it was all about to fall apart. As, King Henry V was nearly king of England and France. The 100 Years' War against France was raging during Henry V's reign, and he was quick to take advantage of it. With legendary victories like the Battle of Agincourt, Henry V came within a hair's breadth of taking all of France for himself. Had he lived, the two kingdoms would likely have become one, and the entire history of Europe would have been completely different. But fate had other plans in store. Just because they wanted to shit on the next Henry, like, super hard. But no, Henry VI's parents fell in love at first sight, as Henry was rampaging across France, taking massive swaths of land for himself. Yeah, he was so unstoppable that he got the King of France to name him heir to the throne just to stop his warpath. Literally, this guy was fucking up France so bad. The king was like, you know what, fuck it. Here, you're heir apparent. Leave us the fuck alone, okay? I'm older than you, probably gonna die before you, so as soon as I die, you'll just be king, okay? And you get what you want. But just for now, just let me have these last few years. While Henry V was on his campaign, he caught a glimpse of the French king's stunning daughter, Catherine of Valois. Marrying a French princess was a shrewd political move. Not to mention the fact that her beauty left Henry absolutely floored. She was sexy as fuck. He was like, damn, girl, I won't get with you. Yeah, Catherine, I won't get all with you. He married her soon after, and they gave birth to a son, the future Henry VI. Henry and England with him was on top of the world. Then in an instant, everything the warrior king fought so hard for just turned to dust. Henry V was all set to become king of France. All he had to do was outlive the feeble King Charles VI, which, for the most part, most people expected him to do it because King Charles VI was pretty fucking frail at that point, and he was dying. But when Henry was only 35 years old, he suddenly fell ill with a painful illness. In mere days, the king went from being a vital and formidable man to a fucking corpse. He probably had stomach cancer or something, and it fucked him up real bad, real hard. He didn't get his prostate checked, He was still a little young to get his prostate checked, but he should have done that. I'm nowhere near there either, so I'll probably I think I have to get it younger because my grandpa had it or something like that. I don't know. I'm gonna have to get my butthole rummaged through and check for those polyps a little sooner than some other people. But King Henry V didn't do that, and so he fucking died, and England's fortunes died with him, unfortunately. His dad was literally this close though. Henry V missed out on becoming king of France by 2 fucking months. That's so sad. He almost was king, literally by 2 months. Charles VI passed almost right after him. Instead, the infant Henry VI became king. No one realized it at the time, but that was probably the worst thing that could have happened for England because Henry VI fucking sucks. Henry VI never even met his father. He was just a few months old when his father croaked and became the youngest king of England ever. His granddaddy, Charles VI, passed soon after. The swaddled babe found himself king of not just one, but 2 countries. In name, he was the most powerful person on earth. But Henry VI was just an infant. While he came of age, the most ruthless nobles in Europe kept busy by playing the Game of Thrones. The Game of Thrones! Do, 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 do. Anyways, Henry VI also never really knew his mom, so he was kind of like an orphan. Which, you know, like the more I read up on it, I was like, oh shit, man. That fucking Henry VI had like a rough childhood. But yeah, Henry V's death devastated his widowed Catherine of Valois. She took solace in her beloved child Henry VI. However, her boy was about to be ripped from her grasp as well. The English nobles didn't trust the French princess to begin with, and once the king was gone, they had enough. Afraid she influenced the future king against them, they kept her away from her child as much as possible. Henry VI spent most of his childhood in the care of various English aristocrats with only limited contact with his mother. Because, you know, that's how you raise a stable and well-meaning king, is you rip them away from their parents and anybody that, you know, they could have formed attachments to as an infant. And that's totally not going to fuck them up at all. Yeah. Yeah, that deserved a shot. Fuck. Oh, boy. But yeah, so Henry VI was kind of king of France. Even though Charles VI had promised France the throne of Henry V, the warrior king's death changed everything. Technically, Henry VI should have become king. But the French weren't about to let a squalling infant claim the crown, especially not an English one. The French were quick to ignore the promise and name Charles they ignored the promise and they named Charles VII King of France. Scrambling, the English named their own Henry VI King of France in opposition. Unfortunately, the next few years would prove that Henry VI was not the man his father was. Soon enough, everything began falling apart. Henry VI holds two important distinctions in history: youngest king of England, and the only king to become king of France as well. But yeah. He became king at the wrong fucking time. You know, he took the throne at a pretty rough time in England. His father's campaigns had taken a toll on the English economy, which would have probably been a little revived if Henry V had lived longer and actually became king of France as well, because then he could have like made restitution from France and had like some of their nobles pay them back for like war debts and everything. But you know, yeah, that probably would have led to more rebellion anyways. And Henry VI would definitely not. Well, I guess if like he had his parents, maybe he would have been better. I don't know. Leading to anyways, this leads to a depression known as the Great Slump. Having squabbling nobles run the country for 16 years didn't exactly help, as all the nobles were fucking just being ruthless to each other. Lots of schemes and plots, lots of little fingers and fairies just mostly little fingers, trying to take over and take control of the throne because they could. The country needed a strong leader to lead it through this difficult time, and Henry was definitely not a strong leader. He was a little bitch, a super little bitch. Henry's mom, Catherine, saw her star fall extremely quickly. One day she was Queen of England, said to become the Queen of France as well. The next, she was a widowed stranger in a foreign land, kept away from her child, from influence. So she ends up finding solace in the arms of a man named Owen Tudor. And if Tudor doesn't sound familiar, it should. King Henry VIII is like arguably like one of the most famous kings of England, and he was a Tudor technically. Though that was more slander, and if you called him a Tudor back in the day, he would have fucking killed you. So, you know, maybe if you are a time traveler, don't go back there and do that. Don't think anyone can time travel though, but we'll see. Maybe someone that's a time traveler listens to this because for some reason, I offer a different insight that actually like makes sense to some people in the future. I probably don't. I feel like I'm fucking dumb, and I just like read a lot of stuff, and now I'm spilling it out to you, and you have to accept it as fact. I'll be honest, everything that I've been reading so far, like I only fucked with you guys like twice this episode. So there's that. But Catherine ends up getting the last laugh because her son Henry VI didn't exactly thrive as king. But her grandson Henry Tudor would ultimately end up as the victor of the War of the Roses, which we'll get into. And his line would see one of England's worst ever rulers, the infamous Henry VIII, and one of its greatest, Elizabeth I. So, you know, yeah, it's like a 50-50 with the Tudors. Like, you either get a good one or you get a bad one. But yeah. As a child, Henry VI was feeble, shy, and nervous. Unlike his father, bloodshed terrified him. And his naivete made it easy just for about anyone to take advantage of him. If you thought the English court was messy before he became king, things only got worse once he took the throne. He was prone to taking favorites, and the nobility quickly became divided and tense. But while things at home were started to, look pretty darn shaky, that was nothing compared to what was happening across the English Channel. From the moment Henry V left the world, the French set about reclaiming the lands he'd conquered. They immediately took advantage. And Joan of Arc actually shows up. So this is when Joan of Arc lives. She comes in, leading the French to victory after victory. English holdings in France had been steadily shrinking for years. And when Henry VI took over, he did nothing to help matters. Fighting scared him, and he listened to anyone who would suggest that he seek peace with France. Namely, two people. But, this one guy that everyone fucking hated, especially his Uncle Richard, fucking hated because he was a piece of shit coward. Many in England were furious that their new king would so readily give up the lands they fought for, tooth and nail for. That many of their brothers and, uncles had or fathers and uncles and grandfathers went and died for to get those lands. And the king was like, nah, dude, fuck that. I don't want this shit. I could only imagine how pissed I'd be if that happened. I can only imagine how pissed some of our soldiers are with the peace that we brought to... I wouldn't say peace. Nah, never mind. I'm not even going to say that shit because, I respect what soldiers go through. I respect veterans. But I don't think the U.S. was right to get themselves involved in the Middle East. I think we did it for not great reasons, to be honest. So there's that. But yeah, I can imagine how pissed some of those soldiers would be, though, if they thought they were doing the right thing. And maybe we did in some cases. We helped out a few people. And then we just fucking bailed out, man. That's crazy. That's crazy shit. But yeah, Henry VI ended up getting some super powerful enemies, namely Richard, the Duke of York, one of the most powerful men in England. And Henry would ignore him all the fucking time, which is what causes a lot of issues. Henry had a good marriage, though. The Sixth had a good marriage. His pursuit of peace led to his marriage to the gorgeous and cunning French Princess Margaret of Anjou. Henry is absolutely smitten, and he was willing to do anything to marry her, though the cost would turn out to be painfully high. He would end up, trading quite a bit of land. So he needed the approval of Charles VII of France to marry Margaret, and this guy wasn't a fucking dumbass. Charles was a far more effective ruler than Henry, and he made sure to take the English king to the cleaners. Normally, a marrying king meant that the bride's family would cough up an extravagant dowry, but not in this case. Charles not only got Henry to waive the dowry, but actually got the English king to give him the extremely valuable French province of Maine. Henry would do anything to avoid conflict, so he agreed, a decision that would come back to haunt him. And he tried to cover this up. Henry and his advisor were well aware giving up Maine would be extremely unpopular, so they decided to hide that from the English public when they announced the marriage. It's like America giving up fucking New York or something just so the president can get with some bitch from a foreign country. Or some bitch from one of our enemies, fucking, Korea. So let's imagine Biden just wanted to hook up with one of Kim Jong-il's daughters, and he decides to be like, hey, here, listen, you let me bone your daughter, you get to have New York, okay? In Congress, in the Senate, and everyone just is yeah, sure, we'll keep it a secret. We're not gonna tell anyone. And so Biden announces that he's fucking Kim Jong-un's daughter. They don't, spell it out a little bit. And so everyone's like, all right, that's weird. A little fucking gross, you old pervert, but good for you, I guess. And then later we find out that he gave up New York to do it. Fuck you, man. I could just imagine Biden doing some shit like that, or Trump. That'd be so wild. Oh, shit, man. That's the next step. That's the next step a president has to take. They have to trade one of the states to get some pussy. That'd be funny. That would be so funny. So yeah, if people disliked Henry and his cronies before, they utterly hated them now, and it was only about to get worse. However, though, I will be honest. Margaret of Lancaster, or Margaret of Anjou, was amazing. Many people hated her. Everyone respects her, though. She was intelligent, capable, and above all else, ambitious. She was so ambitious, she's able to raise up her own army. She's able to, like, get back her husband and, like, fight battles for him, essentially, and, like, do all this political maneuvering and shit. She gets people fucking killed and executed. She's crazy good. In fact, when writing A Song of Ice and Fire, Margaret inspired George R. R. Martin to create one of his most cold-blooded characters, Cersei Lannister. The only difference is Cersei was fictional, while Margaret's dark deeds were all too real. Like killing kids. Fucking crazy. She learned from the best. Margaret took inspiration from her mother, Isabella, the formidable Duchess of Lorraine. When a rival took Margaret's father captive, Isabella personally led an army to rescue her husband. Afterward, Isabella would continue to take an active role in ruling her husband's domain. It's no surprise Margaret learned to fight for what was hers. Henry VI was lucky to have her without his wife by his side. He would have been toast in an instant. I completely agree with that. He would have fucking... Like, it wouldn't have mattered. He would have just, like, fucking died. Or, like, just given up his throne because he's like, fuck, I don't want to be king. It really just seems like he just didn't want to be king at all. Which, like, if you're ruling from birth, I think I would kind of get that because that stress would suck. Speaking of sucking, you know, unlike many other English kings, Henry VI just never took a mistress. So, you know, ranks pretty low even on the whole slutty king, scale there. So he just wasn't really a king. Maybe Henry just loved no one but Margaret, but others have suggested a slightly stranger reason. It was long rumored that Henry had a hopeless phobia of naked bodies. According to one chronicler, Henry literally ran away in fear after a lord brought a gang of bare-chested ladies to a Christmas celebration as a dirty joke. Oh man, poor guy. I mean, that's what happens when you don't... I didn't have a dad to tell me about the birds and bees either, but I don't know, maybe he was just prudish, or like he just was really nervous, because he was like, I don't know what to do. Nobody tells me what to do. Because they all want me to fuck their daughter, so they will be king. Which I actually think was happening. They're trying to like set him up with different people, and he ends up choosing Margaret, and so it's like, oh no. But yeah, they this guy just brings in a whole bunch of like naked chicks, and he's like, I can't do this. I need to run away. Oh no. On top of that, he's so nervous and shy about sex that it takes nearly a decade of marriage for Margaret to get pregnant. Most people place the blame for that on Henry's inability to perform in the bedroom. The king apparently had absolutely no fucking clue what he was doing, and people noticed. Reportedly, some of the couple's most trusted attendants eventually joined them in the bedroom to ensure that they did the deed properly. Can you imagine? It's just like Wentworth, his butler, like, yes, sir. You need to place your cock in the pussy. So, here, let me show you how it's done. Wentworth takes out his dick. So what you do is you have to lift up her legs, and then you begin to insert, and he like starts like fucking Margaret a little bit, just a little bit of cucking, just so he can understand, but he doesn't come. Henry the whole time I was like, yeah, okay, so that's what you do, okay, all right. Thank you, Wentworth. Thanks. Oh man, poor fucking guy. But Henry does seem to have loved Margaret quite a bit. Despite all the political struggles, Henry and Margaret had a very tender relationship. The couple once kicked off a New Year celebration by just receiving the gifts in bed, where they lay in their PJs and pillows all morning. And, if that sounds familiar, that's like John and Yoko. And unfortunately, their union's going to have like a similarly sad ending. So, yay. Depression. Woohoo! I love sadness. Yeah. Henry VI does have a super weird way of like showing affection. In his more lucid years before he goes fucking mad, a young Henry greeted his bride by disguising himself as a squire and unmasking his royal identity to her in a show of courtly love and pageantry. But this is during the all too brief good days. Soon enough, their entire world would be thrown into chaos as he begins to let England fall apart. And you'd think that losing Maine, just to get Margaret would be rock bottom for him, but you would be way off. He would sink way lower. The following year saw England completely go to shit. The economy doesn't improve at all. Corruption just becomes super rampant in every level of government because everyone's able to use Henry to do whatever the fuck they want. And they besides go to war. As long as they're not saying, hey, we should fight France and trying to get some of our shit back, they get to do whatever the hell they want. And the countryside fell to anarchy as law and order completely breaks down. The people were angry, and it was only a matter of time before they did something about it. His friends were utterly hated. The Duke of Suffolk was one of Henry's favorite advisors and one of the most hated men in England. Notably, Suffolk was the driving force behind seeking peace in France. He'd been the one to suggest marriage to Margaret de Anjou, and he'd been quick to agree that Maine was a fair price to pay. He was the one who was like, yeah, dude, we should totally just give Maine away so you can get laid. Oh, fuck, man. That's crazy. While Henry loved him, many nobles considered Suffolk's actions outright treacherous. And it probably was, to be honest. I think he was like in communication with Charles and was kind of just deceiving Henry and using him like a fuck stick. So he did everything in his power to protect Suffolk, but couldn't prevent his friend from meeting his end at the hands of Richard II later in life. A more effective king might have been able to protect Suffolk, but Henry was pretty much useless. He powerlessly watched his parliament impeach Suffolk in front of an angry mob, calling for the man's blood. Realizing that his friend's life was in danger, Henry bent to the mob's will and exiled Suffolk, but that wasn't good enough for his enemies. And as Suffolk was trying to sail across the English Channel, they would end up fucking finding it out and killing him. They like butchered his body, and it shocked England and proved to everyone just how much Henry's word meant. It meant shit. He couldn't really do anything. So Henry VI did found some schools. He hated fighting, but he was very interested in other matters such as religion and education. He founded Eton College and King's College, Cambridge, and both of those are just very legendary institutions that stand to this day. But this is not a time for men of letters. It's a time for men of war, and war was coming. So he picks like the worst person to lead his armies. Henry does eventually decide to fight for his territories in France, and he had the hapless Duke of Somerset as the leader of the English forces, which turned out to be a huge mistake, as Somerset, who had been until that point firmly against fighting France, made a complete mess of things across the water, perhaps on purpose, to get Charles to be in charge. We don't know for sure because, it might be like Somerset was like, hey, if I help you out and you take over, then you give me a good deal and everything is great and I get to live in luxury. But we don't know if that's for sure or not. Within a year of taking up the fight, the Duke had lost all of Normandy, the jewel of the Henry V's prizes in France. And that was just the start of the screw-ups. Pushed out of France, most beleaguered Englishmen limped back to English shores, only to find there was no money to pay them. So after they were fighting and doing all this shit, he couldn't pay his soldiers at all. Many of these men took to roaming the countryside, raiding villages to keep food on the table. England became truly a scary place to live, with just raids happening constantly. It's like dealing with the Vikings, but it's your own countrymen fucking you over. And Henry VI was completely incapable of doing anything about it because he couldn't, pay them, and he was kind of fucking just stupid. He loses everything his father earned. After Normandy, they reclaimed the valuable Duchy of Aquitaine. The French did, which the English had held for 300 years at that point. The French didn't stop there. They kept going until England possessed nothing but the cities of Calais in the north. Just a few decades earlier, it seemed like France was set to become just another English province, but Henry VI screwed up so badly that he lost it all in a matter of years. The loss of Bordeaux was the final nail in the coffin. When Henry heard about it, his feeble mind snaps. So and this is where he goes crazy. The news that he'd lost Bordeaux quite literally drove Henry insane. He had a total mental breakdown and became completely unresponsive for over a year. After spending the better part of a decade waiting for a child with his wife, even the birth of his son Edward of Westminster couldn't snap him out of it. And through all this time, the situation in England was only getting more and more dire. Many historians believe that Henry's madness may have been caused by the fact that he had schizophrenia, which he may have inherited from his grandfather, King Charles VI of France, who suffered from similar bouts of insanity throughout his life. And while Henry was incapacitated, his enemies began to gather. Richard, the Duke of York, who had been such a vocal critic of Henry, used his power and influence to get himself named as protector of the realm. While Henry couldn't rule, York, who also allied with another of England's most powerful men, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, better known as the Kingmaker, because this guy, he does a lot of shit. Together, these two men set about claiming England for themselves, and they resorted to some pretty devious tricks to do it. York and Warwick weren't stupid. They realized their greatest adversary wasn't Henry, it was the Queen, which is, correct. Margaret of Anjou, who posed the biggest threat. So when York became protector, he quickly marginalized Margaret, allowing her absolutely no say in matters of state, just like pushing her out completely. Being like, this is no place for a woman and get the fuck out of here, you crafty little bitch. I know you'd fuck things up for us, so leave. And that was just the beginning of their plots against her. Margaret of Anjou had a good reason to be wary of Richard of York. But, excuse me. By some interpretations, the Duke had actually a better claim to the throne than Henry himself. If she wasn't careful, she might see everything she earned taken from her. But still, with her husband incapacitated, all she could do was bide her time and wait for her moment. And, Richard and them started spreading a whole bunch of rumors. Margaret was having an affair with the Duke of Somerset, and that her son Edward of Westminster was actually Henry's. Not only did this make people distrust their French queen even more, but it also opened the door for someone else to become Henry's heir, namely York himself. Now, to be fair, Henry was famously scared of naked bodies, and he wasn't exactly the most virile of men at the best of times. So the rumors very well could have been true, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. York and Warwick had made an enemy of Margaret of Anjou, and she was not someone to be crossed lightly. That being said, Henry VI, his mental breakdown begins to get so bad he doesn't even recognize his own son. When he finally comes to, he was absolutely astonished to discover that he even had a son, even though the boy had been presented to him a year earlier. So he was like, what the fuck, I have a kid? Could you imagine just like all of a sudden coming to and like being lucid out of nowhere and you just have a kid that you had no idea about? Oh, that'd be wild. That'd be like, I have a 2-year-old. That'd be if like just last year my wife is like, hey, you have this son. And I'm like, whoa, what? When? So, oh man, that'd be wild as shit. Yeah, I could not fathom how crazy that'd be. Oh shit! I'm recording this at night, so I'm a little sleepy with the lupiness of the alcohol as well. So when Henry ends up finally coming to his senses around Christmas in 1544. He woke up to a world that was completely different than when he left. He had he had the son. Richard of York was protector of the realm. Nobles were saying that York should usurp him and take the throne. Yet again, Henry found himself in a tense situation that required firm leadership. And what did he do? He made everyone hold hands. I'm not shitting you. His solution for all the problems is like, everyone, you guys just need to hold hands. If we hold hands and we all love each other, everything's gonna be good, guys. Let's just all love each other, okay? Henry VI's great plan to ease tensions to save his reign was to hold a holiday called Love Day. Fucking lover, not a fighter. He's nothing like his dad. Oh, man, his dad probably rolled in his grave. Oh, I can only imagine that his dad's spirit was like, no! You fucking idiot! No! Stop! Oh God, how are you even mine? Oh, oh man, I like if I was Henry VI's dad, I'd be like, are you what? Why? Just kill them. You're king. Be a king. God damn it. Henry ends up forcing all of England's most important nobles to hold hands and walk from Westminster Palace to St. Paul's Cathedral. He specifically tried to make sure that people who hated each other the most walked hand in hand. He coupled Richard of York himself with Queen Margaret of Anjou. Margaret of Anjou. If you thought this day couldn't be any more awkward, it actually happened after the two squabbling factions had already met in battle. Like they had already fought. And he was just like, yeah, dude. Yeah. And we'll get into that battle here in a little bit. It's called the Battle of St. Albany. And that was technically the first battle of the War of the Roses. But Margaret was really pissed. As if sitting Ireland as his incompetent rival lost all of England's territory in France wasn't bad enough, Richard still had Margaret of Anjou to deal with. The vicious queen allegedly made several attempts at York's life while he was staying in Ireland, but to no avail. Some of these attempts included having a soldier impersonate one of his soldiers and attempt to shoot him with a crossbow. She tried having him poisoned. She tried having him shot while he was taking a shit with an arrow. She sent French assassins, thought to have been sent by Charles, to kill him, and they failed. Richard, the whole while, was like, fuck, nope. And so York was like, nah, I ain't dealing with this shit. He lives to like take power, and he never forgot anybody that crosses him. So he was like, I'm going to get this bitch. But Richard, while he was protector, Richard had Somerset thrown behind bars to the delight of many. Somerset's failures in France were a national embarrassment, and few were sad to see him go. Seems like a no-brainer, right? Like, he fucks up. He should, be in jail for potentially betraying the crown. Henry VI, however, loved the Duke of Somerset, no matter how much he screwed up. And as soon as Henry came back to the world of the living, he released Somerset and gave him all of his power back. And for Richard of York, that was it. He was like, and I'm fucking done. Finally, fed up with this embarrassment, Richard of York decided to take matters into his own hands, well aware that the newly restored Duke of Somerset would probably bring charges against him. He gathered an army and set off to face Somerset directly. The two forces meet at St. Albans in a battle that would go down in history. So, this is where we finally get into the War of the Roses. Yeah, you heard me right. We finally did it, boys and girls. We're here. We're at the War of the Roses. We did it! We got through it. We now understand why it happens, because the French and the English fucking hate each other, and then, the English almost took over, and then Henry VI was a fuck up. Around Christmas Day, 1554, King Henry regained his senses, disaffected nobles who had grown in power during Henry's reign. Most importantly, the Earls of Warwick and Salisbury took matters into their own hands. They backed the claims of the rival House of York, first to the control of the government, and then to the throne itself, from 1460, pointing to York's better descent from Edward III. It was agreed that York would become Henry's successor. Despite York being older, in 1457, Henry created the Council of Wales and the Marches for his son Prince Edward, and in 1458 he attempted to unite the warring factions by staging the Love Day in London that we talked about, where he made everyone hold hands, and I don't know, like probably after they're done holding hands, he was like, okay, now everyone get your sheets out and don't get naked, but we begin the orgy. A nakedless orgy with everyone's clothes on, and we're going to do nothing but rub our genitals against each other. I imagine that's what the Love Day was actually like or something, instead of just holding hands. I know, it's a little more interesting. A little more complicated to have sex, too, while you're fully clothed. Don't know how you pull that off. But Henry knew. Henry did. So, if you're wondering what I'm doing there, I just chewed ice. So, you know, if you you feel like that hurt your teeth, it's because your teeth are little bitches. You need to get stronger teeth. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe drink some more fucking milk, and maybe you too could eat ice and be a fucking champion like me. Anyways, despite such attempts at reconciliation, tensions between the House of Lancaster and York eventually broke out in open war. The forces engaged at the Battle of Northampton on the 10th of July of 1460, where the king was captured and taken into captivity under the Yorkists. Queen Margaret, who had been on the field, managed to escape with her son. That's right. The queen was fucking on the field. And she escapes with her son still. Like, goddamn. She was badass. Like, sending assassins to take out Richard and shit. Like, pretty sure she tried to kill the Duke of Salisbury as well. Most historians agree that she tried to fucking kill everyone. It was, like, subtle, too. She'd just, like, be like, hey, I need you to take care of this problem. And they'd be like, okay, I'll take care of the problem. I love taking care of problems. Yeah. But yeah, the War of the Roses, known as at the time for more of a century after, as the Civil Wars, were a series of civil wars fought over the control of the English throne. And why did Siri want to... my phone just was like... No, I was talking to it. The AIs are about to take over. They're going to take over and kill us all. So, you know. Be afraid. Be very afraid. But anyways, yeah, so fought between the two rival cadet branches, the House of Plantagenet, Lancaster, and York. The wars extinguished the male lines of the two dynasties, leading to the Tudor family inheriting the Lancastrian claim. Following the war, the House of Lancaster and York were united, creating a new royal dynasty. Which is pretty cool, you know? They create this brand new royal dynasty and everything. Yeah, it's super dope. The conflict had the roots in the 100 Years' War, as we'd been talking about. But the wars began in 1455 when Richard of York captured Henry at the First Battle of St. Albans and was appointed Lord Protector by Parliament, leading to an uneasy peace. Fighting resumed 4 years later. Yorkists, led by Richard Neville, 16th Earl of Warwick, often referred to as Warwick the Kingmaker, captured Henry again at the Battle of Northampton. Richard of York attempted to claim the throne, but was dissuaded and was killed at the Battle of Wakefield. His son Edward inherited his claim, which, you know, that's pretty cool. But yeah, the Yorkists lost custody of Henry after the Second Battle of St. Albans, but destroyed Lancastrian Lancastrian army at the Battle of Towtown. Edward was formally crowned 3 months later in June 1461. In 1464, Edward married Elizabeth Woodville, the widow of a Lancastrian knight, and showed favor to her family. He also reversed Warwick's policy of seeking closer ties with France. Warwick, offended and sidelined, turned against Edward in 1469, and it gets a little more crazy here. But let's go ahead and just get into the battles. Like, let's fully get into it. So the first battle, the Battle of St. Albany, the incapacitation of Henry VI by mental illness in 1454 led to the recall to the court of Richard of York, his closest adult relative. Back in 1447, York had been assigned as Lieutenant of Ireland, basically in exile away from England, while his longtime rival Edmund Beaufort, Duke of Somerset and favorite of the king, had been given charge of the lieutenancy of France. After Somerset's own failing in France, York unexpectedly returned to London with significant support not only from nobility, most of whom saw the incompetence of Somerset's efforts in France, but also from the public. He presented himself as a champion of the law and urged the king to have Somerset tried and held accountable for his failures. He also wished to be recognized as heir presumptive to the English throne while Henry VI was childless. Because he was like, hey man, you don't have a kid, and you know what, honestly, I fucking hate you, so I should be the heir presumptive in case you don't have a kid, and you get killed by an angry mob or something, or possibly me, who knows? Hey, that's a good idea, right? You're doing all this other stupid shit, why not let me be king? But yeah, York formed an army to force the issue in 1452, and after meeting with the Council of War and the king, who desperately wanted to avoid conflict because, again, he's a little bitch. York's demands were agreed to. Oh, man, Henry VI. If you have not listened to the Shakespearean play of Henry VI, you should. Henry VI fucking sucks, man. He actually would trade his kingdom for a horse. Like, I do not doubt that at all. Anyways, because his demands were agreed to, York ends up disbanding his army, but was soon arrested and held prisoner for 3 months. An execution was avoided as the king was nervous about arousing trouble. The Duke of York was very popular and known as a man of honor. York was only released after he agreed to swear an oath at St. Paul's Cathedral that he would never again take up arms against the king. Which, it's like, he swears that oath, but I'm pretty sure he just had his fingers crossed behind his back. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll never fucking do that, you prick. From locking me up for 3 months, you asshole. After the English army led by Sir John Talbot, first Earl of Shrewsbury, was routed in the Battle of Castilian, Henry VI suffered a complete mental breakdown and was unable to perform his royal duties. Somerset had attempted to take control of the country and sought to make himself Lord Protector. However, Somerset underestimated the Duke of York's influence and popularity. As many nobles on the council, including York's closest allies, his brother-in-law Richard Neville, Earl of Salisbury, and Salisbury's son Richard, Earl of Warwick, were on York's side. And so York was given the appointment to govern England as Lord Protector and first counselor of the realm while the king remained unfit because he went fucking bananas. Henry VI was rumored to have not just, gone mute, but at night he would yell incoherent things as Margaret was trying to, get him to, come to bed with her, maybe to have sex, and he'd be like, no, the scary claw pussy, it's going to eat my dick, oh no. Some crazy shit like that. Yeah. Henry VI was just, poor guy really probably did have fucking schizophrenia. Anyways, Richard uses his position to move against his chief rival and express the bitterness which he had accumulated over the years, and thus the Duke of Somerset was imprisoned. It was during this 14 months that the sides were clearly forming. There was conflict beyond that between the Dukes of York and Somerset. In fact, the two richest and most prominent families from the north, the Percys and the Nevilles, were having their own conflicts as well. Literally everyone was just going to fucking war. This was like, everyone was pissed at each other. England was in a shit place because of Henry VI, and everyone wanted to take control. The Percys were earls of Northumberland. The Nevilles possessed both Salisbury and Warwick, received through the rights of their wives, and they were one of the richest families in all of England. The Nevilles were also related to the Duke of York by marriage, as the Duchess of York was Cecily Neville, sister of Earl of Salisbury. Much of the fighting was over land and money, but both were clearly choosing sides. The Percys for Somerset and the Nevilles for York. So these families are all starting to be like, okay, I want to side here. I'm going to side with this guy because this fucker is siding with this guy. So by Christmas of 1454, King Henry had recovered from his illness, removing the basis for York's authority. Somerset was released and restored to his former position of power, like I had mentioned, having reconvened the court at Westminster by mid-April 1455. Henry had a select council of nobles decided to hold a great council at Leicester, or whatever. York and his closest allies anticipated that Somerset would bring charges against them at this assembly, so he gathered a fucking huge army and marched to stop the royal party from reaching Leicester, intercepting them at St. Albans. On the 18th of May, news reached the king and the Duke of Somerset in London that York and his allies had raised an army and were marching south to London down the Great North Road. On Somerset's instructions, Cardinal Thomas Brochure wrote to them ordering them to disband. He was like, yeah, I don't know, man, maybe just write them a letter and tell them to fucking stop. That should do it, right? They'll stop if we just tell them to. The Duke of York and the Earls of Warwick and Salisbury authored a letter at Royston on the 20th of May, insisting that they were loyal to the king and not only brought their forces as protection from their enemies. Whether York intended to march on London or capture the king on the road to Leicester is unknown, but Somerset called his allies to St. Albans and left London on the 21st of May, likely fearing the pro-Yorkist London because, if I was him, I would also be afraid of just going out in public anyways and, not getting beheaded just randomly. Because again, if I fucked up and lost all of France, essentially, I'd be scared too. So, anyways, marching to St. Albans with their own retainers, the Yorkists wrote a letter directly to the king on the 21st of May from where they turned off the Great North Road and began to approach St. Albans on the night of 21st of May. The king and Somerset were at Watford, while the Yorkists were camped on the road between Ware and St. Albans. The Lancastrian army of 2,000 troops arrived at St. Albans first, with Humphrey Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, in command. And this guy kind of fucking sucks, and proceeded to defend it by placing troops along the Tonman Ditch and at the bars in Sopel Lane and the Shropshire Lane. The reassignment of Buckingham from Somerset as commander of the army had been a last-minute decision by Henry VI, whether by fear of Somerset's past failures or of animosity towards the Duke of York. That's so funny, because, Henry VI was even like, I don't know, maybe you probably should lead this army. I don't know, man. I think he might suck. Even in his madness, he was still leery of having Somerset fight. That's how well known it was, man, that he just fucking sucked. The 7,000 strong Yorkist army arrived and camped in Keyfield to the east. Lengthy negotiations ensued, with heralds moving back and forth between the rival commanders. After a few hours, it was believed in the Yorkist camp that King Henry VI knew nothing of the letters of negotiation. Oh, man. Okay, could you imagine if the president had a fucking army and, was trying to meet with, again, one of our enemies, and the whole time, while negotiations were being passed around, the president knew fucking nothing, was just twiddling his dick the whole time. That's what Henry VI was doing. Oh my God. This guy fucking sucked at leading. He should have just given up and be like, yeah, sure, why not? You be king. Because he really just, he didn't want to rule, it seems like. Or maybe he did, and he just wanted to do whatever the fuck he wanted, and was just that fucking mad. I don't know. But the Duke of York makes his intentions clear. He wanted Somerset punished and then executed. In a message to Henry VI, he states, "Surrender to us such as we will accuse, and not to resist till we have him which he deserves death." So that was him essentially saying, so just go ahead, give up, you little bitch, because I know you're not going to be able to win this, and you know you're not going to be able to win this. And give me Somerset, because he needs to fucking die. Which he kind of did. Because it really does seem like he may have betrayed everyone in England. This was dangerous territory that York was playing in, as he was demanding much from the king and setting the rules himself. The very act of displaying such an aggressive front to the king was treasonous, but his popularity kept York confident and supported. In a fit of uncharacteristic regency, Henry refused, replying, "By the faith I owe to Saint Edward and the crown of England the first, I shall destroy every mother's son, and they shall be hanged and drawn and quartered." And many people don't think that he actually wrote this. They think it was the Duke of Somerset that wrote this. Or the Duke of Somerset told him to say this. Anyways, after several hours, Richard, despairing of a peaceful solution, decided to attack. Although his army might have been unwilling to attack King Henry, the royal standard was not visible. It might even have been negligently propped against a wall by the royal standard bearer, the Earl of Wiltshire. They were like, I'm just going to put this aside here because we're kind of fighting the king. It'd be a little weird to bear his standard and fight him. That doesn't seem quite right. And on top of that, too, I don't know, it's just, could you imagine fighting the king's army while holding the king's sigil still? Oh, that'd be so wild to do. Anyways, the bulk of Henry's forces were surprised by the suddenness of Richard's attack because, again, they're thinking peaceful negotiations were going on, and the Duke of Somerset probably told them, just relax, sit down, man. No one's going to fucking fight. What are you talking about? That's crazy, dude. You're crazy to think that. And again, most of them were expecting a peaceful resolution, similar to the one at Blackheath in 1452. However, two Yorkists' frontal assault down the narrow streets against the barricades near St. Peter's Church, which were commanded by Lord Clifford, made no headway and resulted in heavy casualties for the Yorkists. The entire battle did not last longer than half an hour and was due mostly to the element of surprise that Warwick placed charging into the town when the Lancastrians were unprepared. Warwick led a reserve force through an unguarded part of the town, through back lanes and gardens. Suddenly the Earl appeared in the market square where the main body of Henry's troops were talking and resting. They were just fucking chilling, man. They were like sitting down, having dinner, talking about probably some bitch out in Middle East who apparently had like dragons born or some shit and was like trying to come over to England and was going to take over, because like the Anjous, she was like the last actual Anjou descendant, and they were all dragon riders and shit. And then they're like, man, maybe we should go for her when she gets here, or maybe not. I don't know. I kind of like being here. Do you remember like that one dude who like was Viking that we beheaded recently? That's kind of crazy. No, that didn't happen. That's the first part of Game of Thrones. There's evidence they were not yet expecting to be involved in fighting, as many were not even wearing their helmets. Which again, you're an army and you have an enemy army standing at your gates. You should be on the ready, or at least there should be a force always patrolling, getting ready to yell and be like, "It's wartime, bitches, let's go." Goddamn, it does not matter. If I was ever in control of an army, it does not matter how peaceful we think the situation is. Patrol, patrol, patrol. You always check your six. Holy fuck. It's like when you're playing Risk and you trust your buddy not to try and capitalize on you when you're making an alliance to take down someone else. No. No, you don't do that. You fortify where they are still, and you make sure that you're ready for an attack against them as you two are plotting your dual attack on your main enemy, and you subsequently are making sure you're keeping your alliance and potential alliance with your enemy against them in case they do decide to do a full betrayal. And then you go into your end game after you kill one of them, and you essentially when it becomes a 1-on-1. The strategy becomes less, and it becomes more of a game of chance when you're rolling dice attacking. Yeah. There's enough risk strategy. But yeah, no. Patrol, and they weren't fucking patrolling, so they fucking are gonna lose this battle. Warwick charged instantly with his force, routing the Lancastrians. Somerset, knowing very well that York would never let him live, had sought refuge at the Castle Inn. When the Yorkists surrounded the building, Somerset decided to try and fight his way out. He charged out into the main street over the bodies of the defenders and killed 4 men before being struck down. Which is kind of surprising, considering how much of a bitch he was. I'm actually very surprised he killed anyone. Oh, man. That's again, maybe he really was just trying to fuck over England and get Charles VI to have more France back, and I don't know. Anyways, the Earl of Northumberland was killed trying to get to the refuge at Castle Inn, because again, everyone wanted to kill the fucking Duke of Somerset. Lord Clifford of Skipton, an ally of Percy's, was hacked to death in the main street. On the Earl's orders, his archers then shot at the men surrounding the king, killing several and injuring the king and the Duke of Buckingham. The Lancastrians, manning the barricades, realized the Yorkists had outflanked them, and fearing an attack from behind, abandoned their positions and fled the town. Because again, much like their duke, they were also bitches. God damn, man. I don't know. There's a time to retreat. I shouldn't call them bitches, because when it's time to retreat, it's time to retreat, and they did. They had lost. So, in total, the result, the first battle of St. Albans was relatively minor in military terms, with fewer than 60 killed from approximately 5,000 combatants. But politically, this was a complete victory for York and the Nevilles. York captured the king, restored himself to complete power, while Somerset and Neville's northern rivals, Henry Percy, Earl of Northumberland, and Lord Clifford, all fell during the rout. Among the wounded were Buckingham, Thomas de Courtenay, Earl of Devon, Jasper Tudor, half-brother of the king, and Somerset's son, Henry Beaufort, Earl of Dorset. The sudden attack by and bravery of the 26-year-old Earl of Warwick began his famous military career and would lead to his reputation as the Kingmaker. The next day, York escorted King Henry back to London, and York was appointed Protector of England by Parliament a few months later. And the day after this is when fucking Henry was like, hey man, let's all hold hands. And that's when Love Day took place. And that's the story of Love Day, y'all. Shit's crazy. This shit's wild, man. And that is where we are going to end today's episode. And we will conclude next week with part 3 of the War of the Roses. Yeah, that was a lesson or something or other. I don't know. You're all dismissed. Just go home. I don't give a shit if you don't do your homework or not. I don't give a fuck. Get the fuck out of here. Oh, thanks everyone for joining me today. Just me, because Braden was being disobedient, so I had to chain him up in the basement. And he's not allowed out for another week or two. So maybe next week he'll be here for part 3, maybe not. Depends if he's a good boy. If he's a good boy, then maybe he gets a little special privileges that he's not going to normally get. But seriously, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. I'm going to be recording my first Patreon exclusive episode probably tomorrow night. Do some editing on that. I'll be reading the story of Kitten Stomper from r/TrueSTL and going through a timeline of their comments in the True STL space. Because, oh my God, the lore from that is so funny. Because it's this guy on Reddit, or this girl on Reddit, or whatever they identify as, a kitten, probably. And they pretend that they're a Skyrim character or like a Morrowind character. And they have relationships with these fictional characters that they treat. It's so funny. If you ever get interested in like crazy weird shit going r/TrueSTL on Reddit, it's fucking wild, man. But seriously, thank you guys. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. I hope you guys are having a lot of fun listening to it. I'm really trying to make this better. Part of it's, because I'd like to grow the audience a little more. And then part of it too is because I've gotten really into it. So I'm hoping that the audio has been sounding a lot better. I really like this new microphone. I got a good deal on it. So it sounds better to me. I think it should sound better to you guys, but I don't know. I've been listening to it, and it sounds a lot better to me because like I don't have to turn it up as loud in my car anymore. I can, turn it up normal as I'm listening to it on my drives to work. But here's some announcements. Here's some updates. I got another email from a fan today, and let me put it up here on my cellular device. All right, this one is from listener Kevin something. Kevin says, "Hey, Tyler, Braden, big fan. Listened to your last episode. Just wanted to say you pronounced basically everything that was French completely wrong. That being said, I had a good time. I've been having fun listening to a few last episodes, and I needed to tell you that you fucking suck at speaking French. And that's all. Bye." Okay. All right, thanks, Kevin. Good to know. I do know that. You're probably French. And if so, fuck you. Now, you're right. I need to look up a pronunciation guide for a lot of these words. I'm really busy. I got a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old, and I got a full-time job on top of this. So this is mainly for fun. Yeah, if this ever gets big enough where I can stop working, sure, I'll I'll put in like 60 plus hours a week into this if I need to make it extra good. But that's unrealistic right now. So I'm spending the amount of time I can on it, which is still a good amount of time. I probably put into around like ever since I started up working again. Because before, while I was on baby leave, I was putting in roughly 30, almost 40 hours a week. So almost like a full work week anyways. Now I've cut that down to about 10 to 15. But luckily these episodes have been getting longer and I've had to break them down into parts. So that gives me a little bit more time for scripting. So I'm getting ahead on some of my scripting, which is nice. This last step, this War of the Roses, the scripting did take extra long. It took me like 2 weeks instead of like the week. I don't have any more fan emails. I don't even know if that's like a fan email. That was more like hate mail. But feel free to email me, guys. It's just historicalquarrels@gmail.com. And yeah, I mean, I'll read everything you guys send me on air. And if you do like the show enough and you want to see it grow more and, you know, get more content or just chat with me, I'll chat with you personally on Patreon. You know, I'll, after I have some people on there, I'll probably do some live streams and we'll get together and have fun, man. Hell, I play a lot of games. If you ever want to play Civ, I'll play some Civ with you. Or if you want to play some Call of Duty, I finally downloaded Call of Duty. I'm not good at it, though. So I'm telling you that right now. You'll probably get pissed playing with me. You'll be like, you fucking suck, Tyler. Which is fair. I do. So, guys, I love this. And I love the fact that you guys listen to this. It makes me happy. If you're listening to the end of this, you know, thank you. It means a lot. Your support means a lot. And, you know, this is, and if, you know, no one is listening to this and I'm just fucking crazy and Kevin's just made up, then, you know, that's, yeah, I'm just having fun. I'm having fun doing this. It's a good little creative break. Helps me feel better. And like in the off chance that someone does listen to this and this does get like big for some reason, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And seriously, I hope I was able to just entertain you for an hour and a half with some crazy facts. But yeah, get ready next week. We're going to be doing part 3, which will be the end for the War of the Roses, as we finally, you know, got into the first battle. There's way more battles though. Let's see. There's a total of battles. Where's my battle timeline? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 battles. Total of 16 goddamn battles, man. That's crazy. So, you know, just get ready for that. It's going to be good. It's going to be a great time. Going to be super, super duper. We're going to have a very good time. And yeah, guys, again, share this, share some love on Apple Podcasts or, Google Play or wherever you listen to this to. Give me some reviews. I'd like to get better. I know I can speed through sometimes, or I don't know. Sometimes I might just not be funny, but yeah, I can get better at that. I can try workshop more jokes. I've been having fun thinking of jokes, and I don't know, it's interesting. I did improv as a high schooler. I was improv captain, which I don't know, that might make you hate me, but I don't know. It's fun. I've always loved doing shit like this, and it brings a smile to my face. And seriously, I appreciate you guys. I'm rambling now. But yeah, thank you guys again so much. I'll catch you in the next one though. Bye-bye.